Hello and welcome to New Beginnings podcast with Michelle. So happy you're here. We are in the month of April. So we're starting the second quarter of the year. People, the year is moving swiftly by and we need to move with it. All right. I always encourage you guys, let us move. And here at New Beginnings, we are trying to move with the times in terms of moving with what is necessary for us to enhance our well-being. And we have been through the year. We started off the year looking at our finances. We considered in February relationships, more so relationships with husband and wife and the family unit. The month of March was all about our ladies. We looked at mental health. We looked at finding your purpose as an individual, as an introvert. We even looking at water, as well as, again, we considered finances. In the month of April, we are encouraging you to continue enhancing your well-being in many different ways. And this particular way, in April, we are looking at our well-being, finding our purpose, looking at the individual of themselves, looking internal, trying to figure out who you are and what's your purpose out there. And why am I even here in this world? I must have a purpose for being here. I must have a reason for being here today. God has given me gifts. How can I extend my gifts to others so that we can all enjoy the benefits of love with each other and sharing whatever our talents may be so others can also enhance their well-being? So we're starting off again this month with another affirmation, and here it goes. I am responsible for my personal power. I am choosing to believe that I am powerful. I am choosing to stand in my personal power. I am choosing to stand in my personal power with love. Now, I got these affirmations from Anya Van Sant, and she has been such a powerful person in expressing how one should be responsible for their personal power. And I love the affirmations that she shares with us to own it, make it an I am statement. I am affirming that I am responsible for my personal power today. And as we talk about personal power and about love and standing firm in our personal power, today and this month, we will be speaking with Mr. Peter Gordon. Now, everybody may not know who he is, but I know him as the Jamaican in the US. That's how I know him. Mm-hmm. If you don't know, I'm from Trinidad. So anybody from the Caribbean, I all the way supporting them in anything that they're doing. So this Jamaican that I know, and I love his accent, he is one that soft-spokenly shares his wisdom with others on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you find him. He has had the opportunity to share his wisdom with others. I've known him in the bodybuilding field. That's how I met Peter.
That past life.
Past life, right? But it's still a connection.
Yeah.
Right? And that connection stayed because he has the opportunity to share his knowledge with others. And when he does that, it kind of gravitates you to want to learn more. Hence the reason why we have Peter on New Beginnings podcast today and for the month of April. Peter, welcome to New Beginnings podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I don't want to talk too much about you. I want you to talk a little bit about you.
Mm.
Tell me, who are you?
Well, as you said before, I'm from Jamaica. Uh, I would say I'm a father first. I'm the father for a precocious 8-year-old little empress.
Uh-huh.
That we affectionately refer to her name. Her full name is Maya Miko, but
Okay.
we call her Miko.
Miko.
And so I lead with that. I'm a father. I'm a father first,
Yes.
and an evolving human second, right?
Yes.
So my background is that I'm a licensed mental health therapist based in DC, and I also do life coaching as well for those who don't necessarily want so much of a clinical approach, or maybe they're not based in DC and they still want to connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that. I also have a background in clinical health coaching, so I understand it's kind of weird. I understand a whole bunch of stuff about hormones and particularly sex hormones and how all these endocrinal hormones, rather, how they
Mm-hmm.
can affect one's well-being, not just physically, but
Mm-hmm.
psychologically, or how psychologically we can affect that, right? So then the
Yes.
reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I tend to take a very not unique, but a very holistic approach to the work that I do with folks, by looking at just getting a complete picture of who they are before I just say, let's do this, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
On top of all that, so I do that sort of that work part-time because I happen to know, I'm not sure why I have torturing myself, but I'm a full-time doctoral student. I'm doing a doctorate in clinical psychology.
That's not torture. That's a good thing.
Yes, yes, but it makes me poor, but I suppose that's all right,
Poor
but
for now. That's just for a short period of time.
yes, yes. But how
Everything
I
in the
came into
grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. How I came into this field, I actually came to this field later in life. And I think I'll share this with you since you were talking initially about purpose. Um, so back in around 2015, I became fascinated with the world of psychology primarily because I learned about a group of psychologists, Dr. Bancroft and his wife, they're both Dr. Bancrofts. These
Yes.
were in the 19, they're not, they, what people don't know is that their research was instrumental in help advancing Ward versus Brown of education, because they
Mm.
argued based on their research how uh, segregation affected the mental well-being of black children.
Yes.
And so for me, we praised, rightfully so, the stalwarts of the civil rights movements, right?
Right.
But we forget about these science people, these researchers whose work.
Mm-hmm.
And I became fascinated with that, like fascinated with psychology. I became fascinated with philosophy. I'm really into this ancient Roman philosophy called Stoicism.
Okay.
So I'm really into philosophy, like sort of an existential way of living. And I thought about that world a while back, but at the time I was late 30s, going into my 40s, and I was like, I can't make this switch. Like everybody else in our lives, we think that our path
Mm-hmm.
is set one way and we have to go there. And I was in the fitness world at that time, convincing myself that that was the route I wanted to go, when in reality, I hated every I hated every aspect of it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not you would never think that. I would have never think that.
People never thought that, but we're very
Mm-hmm.
good at lying to ourselves.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
very good at using coping systems to convince
Mm-hmm.
ourselves of one thing. And um but I kept just putting that aside, like, never even did therapy at that time. It was
Mm.
something that, no, I don't touch that.
Taboo.
Taboo, exactly. Especially
Yes.
coming from Jamaica, especially just being a black person, whatever.
Yes.
So I ended up couple things happen. And existential therapy, they refer to them as awakening experiences. And awakening experiences are things that when they hit you, they can either drop you in a state of, if you don't have the self-awareness to recognize what they are, they can either drop you into a state of despair or a state of change. It can
Yes.
be a major catalyst. And so they could be death, near-death experience, so death of a loved one or near-death experience for yourself, children moving out, divorce, right? Loss of a job, right? There's a couple of key ones, and they're very instrumental because they make you look at your life and you start to ask the questions that Mark Twain said, which was, the two most important days that you learn is the day you were born and the day you find out why, right? And so those are awakening experiences. I had 3 of them kind of back to back. And this was right after my daughter was born in 2015. I remember hitting a space where I was completely clueless as a father. Like, I didn't like what I was doing job-wise. I felt sort of stuck and quietly, and just a bunch of things, but also trying to figure out what is my role as a father, right? Didn't have anyone to reach out to. Then I ended up, my mother came up from Jamaica to help, and late 2015, she was helping us, and round about October, I think it was, into November, she suffered a heart attack. Now imagine she's visiting from Jamaica, no insurance, stresses of that. And so I had to, there was a lot of stress with that, trying to be a father, and it was just a very, very difficult time. But I held that in and just kept motoring along. She eventually recovered and went home in February. I will say, sadly, she passed away this past December. But she did, but she did get life. That surgery did extend her life. So I'm grateful for that.
Amen.
But so after she went home, this was in February, July, my sister, who I'm very close with, passes away from cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then another 5 or 6 months later, my marriage that I was completely convinced was great, everything was fine, just fell apart overnight. So back to back to back, 3 things.
Yes.
Yeah. Very life-changing. And I remember thinking, what the hell exactly is happening?
Right.
And so I remember finally thinking to myself, very difficult period. This was around 2017 now.
Yes.
And trying to save my marriage, that's not working.
Right.
Coming to terms with that. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe I need to talk to someone. Maybe I need to just get stuff off my chest.
Yes.
And this is important now, because I remember trying to find someone, because I specifically wanted a Black male.
Yes.
And I would learn very quickly that trying to find a Black male therapist, psychologist, whatever the case may be, is you have better luck finding a purple unicorn with a pink horn.
No.
They're not there.
No.
Even in an area which has a high educated Black population like DC.
Right.
And then what I learned later on was, Black folks in this country only make up about 4% of the total clinician workforce. Only 4%.
4%.
4%. It's probably inched up a little bit recently, maybe close to 5%, but 4% back then.
Wow.
Of that 4%, don't quote me, but I think the number of males is around maybe 5 or 10%.
Wow.
So very minuscule number, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember thinking about that at the time. And then I remember when I then tried to find, so I said, fine, I couldn't find a Black male therapist. I tried to find a Black female, even difficult, very difficult.
Right.
Wait lists, a bunch of different things.
Yes.
And I remember I landed on a white female, which worked out. Again, it helped, but I also don't know if I was fully truthful with her about
transparent.
Yeah, fully transparent.
Right.
Was she qualified 100%? Did she help me 100%?
Yes.
But what the thing did do was really have me think about, what is it that I wanted to do? It really started me asking me a question of, again, what is it I wanted to do? And so around about right after my divorce in 2018, I remember I sat there and I said, I'm done. I walked away from everything I was doing. Just completely walked away. Had no income, nothing. And so then as I sat there, just like, I didn't want to do anything I was doing anymore. Just walked away from it. And even decided I'm going to go do Ubering. Nothing wrong with Ubering. I just wanted to get out of the house.
Yes.
And I remember after doing that, I remember sitting down and I started writing a book. Now it's a good and terrible book, but you'll never see the light of day. But I think it was more of a big journal, if you ask me. And
Okay. Okay.
and I remember I started unpacking parts of my life, and I said, you know what? I started realizing that, all this time, this world of psychology and philosophy had been calling to me.
Yeah.
And so I got up one day, I was walking through Rock Creek Park, and I said, I'm going to become a psychologist. Just
Good.
like that. It was in
Yes.
2019. I said, I'm going to become a psychologist.
Okay.
And because I wanted to be a part, one, I really got enamored by the work, but I also wanted to be part of the solution, i.e., representation, right?
Yes.
And so I, but I realized that I didn't have a psychology background. So I made a
Okay.
choice to enroll in a graduate program
Uh-huh.
and do a master's degree in mental health counseling to become a
Okay.
licensed therapist, right?
Okay. Okay.
And because I figured that if I did that, it would open my chances, it would improve my chances of being accepted into a
Yes.
doctoral program.
Yes.
So I finished so I've been licensed now for about a year. And so
Mm-hmm.
as a therapist, and then I got accepted into George Washington University's doctoral program, as I
Good for
mentioned before.
you. Good for you.
And so,
Yes.
yeah, so that's how it all started. It was,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout the process, I don't hide it from people. I, I made myself go broke. Um, I, I, it was a difficult time because I'm trying to be a father. I downsized down to a studio apartment in DC.
Right.
Nights when I would have my little one with me, um, I would put her to bed and I would be on the toilet writing a paper.
Right.
Because I knew
Yeah.
I wanted to get, and I chose not to really work because I wanted to focus
Yes.
completely on that program to keep my grades up to a level where a
Correct.
doctoral program would say, oh, this guy has potential, right?
Right. Right.
So I say all of that to say now that in a lot of ways, it was me finally tapping into what was, I think, my purpose, which
Mm-hmm.
is a big part of what you're saying here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I will say about purpose, with all that being said, am I walking in my purpose 100%, right? I
Good.
will tell you
Good.
that what you see, and I think one of the things you probably noticed was that I post a lot about mental health, psychology, philosophy.
Yes.
A lot of times when I post, I'm actually talking to myself, right? With the
Mm-hmm.
idea that maybe some of it might resonate with somebody else, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
I have sort of, I tell people that this has been this has been a very financially difficult last couple of years because I made this
Yes.
choice, but it's
Uh-huh.
been the most spiritual and intellectually fulfilling.
Yes.
And so it taps into the notion of purpose, right? And you say like, how does one find their purpose? And I think that was a question you were asking, right?
Yes. Yes. How do you find your purpose? At least from what you have shared thus far,
Mm-hmm.
you find your purpose before you even found your purpose, something traumatic had to happen.
In a
And
lot of
most
ways,
of the times, that's what happens to us. Something traumatic happens for us
yes,
to pull up on our bootstraps
yes,
and find our purpose.
yes.
Yeah.
Typically, when we make a major change in our life in that direction, it's usually preceded by a major life event.
Yes.
That's very typical. Some of us are
Yes.
lucky enough to bypass that part and get to the
Right.
purpose part. But for the mere mortals like us,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to, something happens that triggers that an awakening experience happens.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yes.
I always preface this and say this to people, that the notion of finding your purpose, we have to be mindful of that, how we phrase that, because there is no one specific purpose for anyone. Purpose is not
Correct.
static, right?
Yes.
Purpose is not, there's not this one magical thing that's out there for you.
Yes.
Sometimes some people are lucky enough to find this one thing, but
Uh-huh.
every single purpose is cultivated. It's something
Yes.
that you have to think about and cultivate it.
Correct.
And I say this with patients in therapy all the time, like, it's not this magical thing. On top of that, you have to remember, your purpose will fluctuate.
Correct.
Because you will evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
You will shift and change. You might get up one day and realize, like, I could be finished with this doctorate a couple of years from now, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years from now, and suddenly realize I don't ever want to work in a patient provider setting.
Right.
I don't want to work in a clinician setting. I want to do writing.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. What I'm saying is, purpose is, you have to be also okay with changing your mind.
Yes.
Because you're constantly evolving. So when I think of purpose, that's the mindset I think. That is no one specific thing, that it's flexible, it's malleable. And when I think of individuals and trying to cultivate, and let's just use that word now, cultivate purpose. There are 3 questions I say you have to ask yourself, like consistently ask yourself. The third question really depends on if the 2 first questions are, there is some misgivings about your answers. Then you might want to consider that third question. So the first question I tell people to think about asking is, why am I doing this?
Why? Yes.
Why am I doing this? You have to ask, why am I doing this? Is this, why am I doing this? A simple, what about this that intrigues me?
Yes.
Right? How does this fulfill me? Now, the second question you have to ask is, who is this serving? Is it serving a need for me to fulfill as a part of myself that I feel is missing? Very important, of course.
Yes.
Or am I trying to fit into some paradigm that society has designed for me?
Right.
There is a author named he's a psychoanalyst, passed away decades ago, a guy by the name of Eric Fromm. So he's a psychoanalyst, and he said something. He has this book. It's almost like an oxymoron, the title, because it says "Escape from Freedom." And and what Fromm argues is that most of the decisions, all of our decisions we make, don't really belong to us.
Okay.
They're influenced by our parents, society, and our desire to fit in.
Right. Yes.
So when you're asking, how does this serve me? How is this serving me? Is it serving me because something that I think it will help me grow, or am I trying to fit into a box?
We gotta expand on this one. We'll talk about it some more.
Right.
What's the third one? What's the third question?
One is, if you can't clearly answer those questions in a healthy way, then you have to ask yourself the third question: can I walk away from this?
Oh wow.
Right? Can I walk away from this? Like, we have to be okay with changing our minds. We get stuck in a space that, and where we feel we have to go down this path, and we don't recognize that sometimes there's a Stoic phrase called "the obstacles are the way," right? And we get caught up on the end result versus thinking about the process, right? And maybe the process will show you that the end result needs to be different.
Yes.
Right? So the ability to change your mind. I call it the courage to quit.
Okay. The courage to quit.
And so that, so when I think about what sustained me through my graduate studies into my doctoral program and working part-time and all the things, it is, I never got to question 3. Why I was doing it was, it moved me. I'm deeply attracted to the work. I'm deeply attracted to the psyche of people. How can I be a part of someone's journey in uncovering how their ego defenses, their personality style, their lived experiences has shaped, has triggered the things that you're struggling with, right? That why drives me. I'm fascinated by it. I cannot stop listening to podcasts on. Every Sunday I listen to The Hidden Brain on NPR. I listen to a psychotherapy because I'm fascinated by that.
Right.
And the second question, how is it serving me? It's serving me in the sense that the work changes me. That's how it's serving me.
Yes.
I'm continually evolving. I'm not trying to fit into anybody else's box, because that became
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. And so I've never knock on wood, whatever they call it. I've never yet gotten to the third question,
Okay.
And if it happens, if it comes, that's all right. I'll work on that. So that's sort of how I define, how I think
Finding
looking
purpose.
at purpose, how to get to it,
Yes.
how I got to it. I'm not saying that works for everybody, but
Right.
that's how I got to it.
Good. So as we wrap up this segment, because we're coming back,
Okay.
we need to really hone in on those three questions and kind of develop an understanding of why am I doing this? Who is this serving? And can I walk away? And I know there's a lot we can talk about on those three areas. But guys, when you're listening to this, I want you to understand this is not something in a box, and this is not something that is not flexible. This is fluid. This is life. Life is a fluid motion. It's not a stagnant pool. It is a river running into a lake, running into the ocean. It's something that moves. We have to not place ourselves in a box. And we have to understand, as we're living, our well-being can change in many ways based on what or how it's influenced and what was going on in our life at that particular time, what has happened in the past, and what we're thinking about in the future. So I am really happy you shared your story with us in this first segment. And we are going to go a little deeper.
Okay.
We need to help others understand that we can have a great influence or a great impact in understanding what our purpose is and how we can enhance our well-being along with our whole community.
Or better, how to cultivate a purposeful life.
Yes, cultivate a purposeful life. Yes, I agree with that. Peter, I really, really am happy that we have had this opportunity to talk in this first segment about you and your story, because I can see things that we can help others understand that we all go through things, but how we use things to move forward in life and not stay stagnant.
Absolutely. Yeah, life is it's guaranteed to give you uncertainty. It is guaranteed, and no outcome is guaranteed. And if you can live accepting those things and still take action in spite of how frightened you might be, that is how, those are the essence of how we start to cultivate purposeful living. In existential therapy, or which is largely based on humanistic theories, there is there's a book, and I tell everybody should read this book at some point in their lives. I said one book earlier, Escape from Freedom. I think people should read that one. It's an old book, but it's interesting. But the one I think that's most important for anybody to read as it relates to thinking about purpose is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Man's Search for Meaning.
By Viktor Frankl. It is not a self-help book in the vein of self-help book. I'm not a big self-help book person, because I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all thing, and we need to recognize that we all have different lived experiences, culturally, gender, many different factors, socioeconomic status. But Man's Search for Meaning is really about why is it important to live purposefully, and how is it that not living that space affects our mental health. So I highly encourage anyone to
grab that book.
Grab that book. Very easy. You'll probably read it in a couple of hours and you're done. But I'm almost certain for most people who read it and absorb it will change their mindset.
I really appreciate the information you have shared thus far. And we at New Beginnings Podcast look forward to learning more. And diving into finding our purpose and understanding how we can influence others to do the same through our lives. So we are going to say this: I am choosing to believe that I am powerful. gotta start with you. It's a mindset.
It's a choice.
You gotta start with you. Yes. And I am choosing to stand in my power with love. Thank you, guys, and we will see you again soon at New Beginnings Podcast. Talk to you soon.